What we have up there is some data. Data is our friend, I think. And before you can put any value on data, don't worry, you don't have to read it. I'm not going to read it to you either. It's just that table is available to anybody who wants to go online and look at the Selectmen's agenda packet for this evening. It's in the agenda packet in front of each of the Selectmen. I'm sorry I didn't make copies for the school committee, but
we got copies.
You did? Oh,
yes,
good.
We did.
Great. This data, to put value on data, you have to know where it came from, and the majority of it is directly from the last 11 budget summaries that Bud has prepared painstakingly to appear printed in the annual town meeting warrants for the last 11 years, 03, the meeting in May of 03 for fiscal year 04 through the one that we're going to the budget we're about to start spending on the 1st of July of this year, fiscal year 14. Again, I just took the data straight off the raw data, arranged it in columns and rows, and data in columns and rows tends not to do a lot for me. I like a more visual representation, pie charts, bar graphs. And in this particular case, I asked Doug to put that in connect the dots line graph, and that's the next piece of information that will magically appear up there, I hope. There it is. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. I'm going to leave those 2 lines that look kind of innocuous down there at the bottom. I'm just going to leave those for a minute and talk about the rest of them. The orange one is, again, straight out of Bud's budget summary. It's the municipal operating budget. It's grown from about $11.5 million back in 04 to just a shade under 15 in the FY14 budget. If you do something fancy, and Susan can straighten me out here, she teaches a statistics course, so if I go out of line, she'll sort me out in a minute, I'm sure. There's a bend in that line over FY09, just like the readily apparent bend in some of the rest of them. So, and if you look at that, I think I'd have to check my homework here. Yeah, that one's been compacting at about 1.5% a year for those 10 years. The next line up is the local contribution to the school budget. Again, you see the bend at FY09. All the curves bend down in FY09. I haven't tried to find out why. I probably should. I know I had nothing to do with it because I had nothing to do with the budgets until FY11, so some of the rest of you probably did. But if you see that one, it's I've got to find the right line. The local contribution line in those last 5 years has only gone up 2%. So 0.5% a year, local contribution, the part of the school budget that comes straight out of your pocket and mine. The next most significant source of revenue for the schools is Chapter 70, the state aid money. State aid money's actually gone down over that period of 5 years from 09 to 14. So if you look at the purple line there, again, the school budget has leveled out and even gone down a little bit on that basis over that last 5-year period. The next line is net school spending. That didn't come off at Bud's budget sheet. That came from a document that the Department of Education runs for all 321 districts that they track. I think Sandwich is district number 264 or 267 if you want to get online and look it up. I got the data independently. Frank sent it to me, and a week or so later Bill Dietering sent it to me. It was just an electronic transmission of the document itself, so I have ultimate faith in that piece of data as well. Now you see that one took a turn in the wrong direction. most of that, and I said, well, net school spending, that includes the local contribution, Chapter 70, and it includes the school share of health insurance, the school share of retirement. Not all the school employees are on the Mass Teachers Retirement. There's a substantial number who are on our county retirement rolls. There's, I think, a piece from Human Resources. There's a piece from several of Bud's departments who provide service, in-kind service to the school system. So net school spending is what that line is. And then if you want to get a look at total education spending, you have to add in those two lines down at the bottom. We send students to Voc Tech, and we send students to charter schools. Predominantly, we send them to the Sturgis Charter School. So if you add those two lines down at the bottom to the greenish line that is net school spending, you get total education spending. And then if you go all the way to the top, that's the entire town budget for the last, it was 11 data points covering a span of 10 years. It was 52 million back in 04, 69 million in 14, up 17 million, which is 1/3 of 52 million, roughly. 33% it's gone up in 10 years. If you look at Proposition 2.5 plus 0.5% of natural growth, and then add a $2.5 million override and subtract a $500,000 underride, that's exactly what you'd expect. It's up 33% over a span of 10 years. Now, I said I'd leave those two bottom lines for last. Well, the red one is charter school spending. In the period from FY09 to FY14, it's gone up by $1.9 million. You take your eyes back up to the top again there, our entire budget has gone up $4 million. 1.9 of 4 is accounted for by what Bud has been talking to us about for at least 3 years now, the strain that the charter school sending is putting on our budget and causing us to take money from other places to take care of that. Now, if you bring your eyes down to that green line, net school spending, the uptick there is almost exclusively health care, health insurance premiums. Our FY09 number was $7.3 million. The forecast in FY14 is 8.7. $1.3 million of the $4 million that our budget increased in those 5 years is from health insurance. And then the blue line is the Upper Cape Voc budget. It was flat from FY08 through FY11 except for an uptick in FY09. It was at 1.6 million. It's now at 2. So there's another 400,000 there. So if you add the 1.9 in charter school spending to the 1.4 in health insurance and the 0.4 in Upper Cape, you've accounted for $3.7 million of the increase in our budget. Now it's not as simple as that, but just keep those numbers in mind, just to know they're devastating for our budget picture, those three numbers. There's some things going on behind the scenes that don't show on this chart. For example, our mortgage payment, what we pay to service our long-term debt over that 5 years went from 5.9 to 3.9. So we got $2 million of offset from that. So first point, those three numbers, the one that Bud has been cautioning us about at the top of his voice for 3 years at least now, the charter school sending is killing us. And health insurance, we all know that's been driving us nuts. Another point to be made here is that blue line looks innocuous down there. But if you go back to FY04, the Upper Cape Voc Tech budget was $0.8 million. Now it's $2 million. It's increased 125% over 10 years, which is the equivalent of compounding at 9% per year, which is the reason I bring this chart in this context is because while the rest of us have been living within the confines of Proposition 2.5, Upper Cape Voc appears to have been living at Proposition 9. There's probably good reasons for that. I haven't dug into the number, but I raise it here because we're appointing a new person to that school committee who is supposed to represent the students we have at that school, but he should keep in mind that the taxpayers of Sandwich are footing a portion of the bill, so that I'm also glad to have Bob Dutch here with us too, to hear this. And I would really like them to come back in 2 or 3 months maybe and tell me why Proposition 9 works for vocational technical schools and not for our in-house district. So point 1, the 3 things that are killing the budget. Point 2, please, we'd like to know the answer to that question. And the third point I'd try to make here is if you divide net school spending by the number of students we have in the district, and the State Department of Education does that for us every year, the number projected for, well, actually the last number they have data on is FY13. The Sandwich District spent roughly $11,400 per student on the students that we have in-house. I realize that vocational education has to be more expensive than conventional education. You have to name automotive shops and some of the other specialty areas. But if you divide 2 million by the number of students we have at Voc Tech, it comes out $15,500 per student. Does it have to be $4,000 per student more expensive? And then sending, just a sec, I'm almost done, so you look at that red line, what we send and spend in charter schools, and then subtract the, we're sending, what, 2.8 now, Bud, is that right?
Yeah, 2.7, I think. So.
Yeah, okay, so 2.7, we get about 600,000 back, so 2.1. You divide 2.1 million by the number of students we have at charter schools, and you're talking 14,800. So 11.4 to keep them home, 15.5 to send them to Voc Tech, 14.8 to send them mostly to Sturgis. That's why I wanted to do this in front of the school committee, because I want to emphasize what they already know. It's very important that we try to keep our kids at home. The ones who benefit from a specialized education at Voc Tech or a specialized education at a charter school, competition is a good thing. But we have to bear in mind it's a costly thing for the taxpayers of Sandwich. Sue had her hand up first.
I have a question. So in your Upper Cape Voc Tech line budget, is the capital included in that or not? Because they're two separate pieces to the Voc Tech budget.
Right. Yeah. Bob, is capital in this though?
The numbers that you represented, you add capital in.
Okay, but that's...
You added the capital in. Okay, because that...
Yeah. Well, I used
the parameters of that are slightly different than the parameters of our regular school budget.
The formula as to what percentage or what your obligation is calculated differently than it is for the regular budget.
Right.
The operating.
Yeah. But I just lifted the number directly out of Bud's budget report, which Bud says does include capital.
Correct, because he's putting the assessment and locality and the number which includes capital.
Thank you. Frank?
Just for informational purposes, and we're mixing a little bit of apples and oranges, and I'll give you a specific example, this capital issue. If you go to the line chart on the net school spending, okay, as Jim said, this is a report that comes out. It's on the DOE website. You guys can find it. You know where it's at. The numbers that make up these reports are the numbers that we give. The school committee, Dr. Canfield signs off on it with, maybe it's Michelle, I'm not sure, Richard, who does, signs off on it with the accountant, submits it up there and produces these reports. That particular report does not include capital. okay? This number now for the Upper Cape, you're saying, includes capital. I mean, we've had this discussion over the years, and I guess the lesson to you, Mr. Deegan, is this. Learn the formulas, okay? Because there are, yeah, as Susan has said, you know, there are two different things, number one. They're a function of a lot of things, okay? The operational piece is a function of how many kids from Sandwich go up there, okay? The other portion, which is primarily capital, is also a product of the populations of school kids within the town. And it's kind of a unique, that portion especially is kind of unique. I mean, it all is. The 5 communities really have to get together and decide whether they want to spend that money or not, and they've been very supportive of it, with the exception of 1 year, and I think it was 2008, where Sandwich opposed the 29% increase, I think it was, that was being asked for. I believe it was primarily operational. But again, the other 4 communities said no. So even though we, I think, make up something like 24, 25% of the operational budget of the Upper Cape schools, it's nice to know, but unless there's some sort of agreement with the other towns in terms of what you want to do, it's meaningless for all practical purposes.
Yes, Susan?
I just want to make another point. Many years ago, when the high school was built, it had a vocational component. It had automotive repair, it had woodworking, it had electrical, and it had all kinds of vocational type activities for our students. So I think I would disagree with you a little bit relative to keeping the students in town who need vocational training. I think that economy of scale, even though having been on the finance committee, that budget has really increased incrementally. I think economy of scale is that it is better to send our children who need those particular types of vocational assistance to a school like Upper Cape, rather than trying to meet those specific types of needs here within our town.
Yeah, I'd be the first one to agree with that. I strongly encouraged my 15-year-old, as of yesterday, grandson to go to Old Colony Voc-Tech because that type of education suits my grandson Cameron. And I said competition it's great. And another factor here is that if we didn't have 127 students, I think it is, at Voc-Tech and 140 students at essentially Sturgis, we wouldn't have room to do what we're going to do with the 7th and 8th graders a year from this fall. So it's working for us too, because it allows us to right-size our physical facility to fit what we have. So this thing cuts both ways. I just wanted to present some data. You know, last week Chief Wack came in with some data. I brought some tonight, and data is our friend. And I'll leave it at that. Any other comments from the board? Frank?
I've got to agree with Sue. I too think it's wonderful as a parent to be able to have various options. And I think that's what I hear Sue saying. I mean, if your child, whether they have the capability to do one thing or another, that doesn't matter in my mind. It's what their interests are. And I think, in my opinion, is the Upper Cape provides a very unique opportunity for the kids to be able to, as I said earlier, you can get a college, you know, CP, college prep courses, be able to qualify to go to college if that's what you want, learn trade if that's what you want. Same thing at charter. If you want to send your kids to charter and you're accepted there, all well and good, or some other specialty school, whether it's music. I think it's wonderful that we have all of these opportunities. So whether we want to keep kids here, fine, you know, that's good, but I don't think that we should do anything that would discourage parents into saying that they're not supportive of choices. And that was really one of my primary questions to you, Mr. Deegan, is, you know, are you interested in school? I think that's the essence of education in my mind.
we're in joint session. The school committee have any
Any
comments?
questions from the committee? Nancy?
Yeah, no, you stay here.
You're not going to get away. I just started some discussion here.
I thought this was going to be easy.
This
Hi.
truly is the hot seat.
Hi, Nancy Crossman, School Committee, and thank you for submitting for this. I wasn't sure if this was the proper time, but since you brought up the budget, I just wanted to ask you to be mindful of all the things that were brought up tonight and other things that we ask our parents and our children to do, which are fees. And from what I understand, there are no fees. And I think it should be fair that the students that go to whatever school they go to, that something like that is at least considered. And I know there are, the other 4 towns, and there must be some reason why you don't have fees, but I think you should consider things like that so that it isn't so different for the students to stay here or go to one of the other choices. And fees is just one, but I mean, I'm just asking if you will be mindful of those things that we have to consider, and maybe you'll watch our meetings and see the struggles that we go through and see how you can help with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, you got anything you want to say?
A lot of things brought up, and I'd be happy to come back in 3 months and address the many questions and points that you make to provide clarification and detail for deeper understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Dutch. I would entertain a motion regarding the appointment of Mr. Deegan.